Roger, I'll gladly turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will gladly turn it over to Mr. Whitten to present continuation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This may be a little bit shorter presentation than some of our other budget workshops, which might be a saving grace today. What I tried to do in this presentation is we had June 3rd, we had a CIP workshop. We discussed some issues, some projects that had become unfunded. June 17th, we had the first budget workshop and we had the numbers from the June 1st property appraiser's preliminary tax base assessment. So things have changed quite a bit since June 17th. We did continue to make further cuts after June 17th and before July 1st. But on July 1st, the funds between June 1st and July 1st, the general fund, unincorporated, and the other major property tax funds had a fairly significant increase from the June 1st numbers. So June 1st, just for example, in general fund, it was 4.84%, and that went up to 8.17%. So what this slide shows you is the additional revenue those percentages generate. And also, I can tell you that the deficits that we were experiencing on June 17th, of course, went away because of this. And then you'll see further in this presentation that we've discussed some things we might want to bring back before December, when we talked earlier about bringing back certain things in December after year-end close. So the actions we've taken since June 17th, we continue to make additional cuts. No cuts were restored from June 17th, so any cuts we've made through June 17th or July 1st, none of that has been restored. I'm going to go through a list of recommended additions based on that additional capacity we have of things we can bring back that had become unfunded for the board's consideration. And I've left some capacity for a pay adjustment that we can discuss later. And then also the state loan remains available for use. So, Commissioners, this is what it looks like. You can see your revenues and your expenses for the general fund and the unincorporated MSTU, which are your two largest property tax funds and the funds that have deficits at this, or had deficits at this point. And then I wanted to let you know to get rid of the deficit in the unincorporated MSTU, we transferred some additional funding from the general fund, which we do a transfer each year of electric franchise fees, so we upped that so we could get rid of that deficit. On the next page, I'll show you some additional adjustments that align with board priorities and that we have discussed in the past. And then there's some additionally left over for a discussion of a pay adjustment. The board had asked us to bring back each percentage for what that would amount to for a pay adjustment up to 5%. As we as a reminder, on June 3rd, we talked about some things that had become unfunded due to just general financial condition. And this was the main slide of things that were funded by the general fund that had become unfunded. And then I'll show you what we're proposing. What we're proposing to add back, which equals that $6.9 million you saw on the previous page, is the EMS growth plan. So last year, the board approved a 5-year plan for EMS growth based on population growth and population growth within different areas of the county to maintain response times. So this includes 14, Ben? Is it 14 or? This includes 14 additional positions, as well as some additional funding for the tree line EMS station. And then some other things that we thought we'd recommend bringing back prior to December would be the Kuiper Preserve berm, that portion that the county is responsible for that water quality and water resources project. The 10-mile canal south improvements, which includes a cut on a peninsula in the south end of the canal that should improve water flow, shade structures at Three Oaks Park, And then a couple placeholders, and I believe we will be able to fully fund these in December, but just a couple placeholders. Sheriff's Capital, that $2 million is, most of that is an annual debt payment that we're responsible for their Motorola, their Motorola handsets that they carry on them that was purchased several years ago. And then DOT road maintenance. These are just placeholders. So that's $6.9 million. And you can see here, when you reduce, when you add that to general fund expenses, then you have additional capacity in the general fund of about $5.5 million and a little over $2 million in the unincorporated MSTU. And then the next page, the board had asked on, I believe, June 3rd, to bring back what a pay adjustment would equal in the general fund and unincorporated MSTU fund for each percent up to 5%. So that's what those numbers are, and there's enough capacity in both those funds to cover that that pay adjustment. And then we do still have some outstanding issues. So, you know, we will continue to work on these in December when we get the final numbers. But we've got the medical examiner expansion. Growth increment funding has been suspended this past year and is not in the plan for next year. However, if we do bring back some road maintenance funds, that was always included in that growth increment funding that we sent to DOT. Sheriff's Capital, we put $2 million in, but they had requested $8 million. EMS stations, we're still value engineering the stations in addition to the tree line station, which is going to come out of the ground or have a groundbreaking fairly soon. So we're still working on that. And then DOT maintenance in December, hopefully we could bring back about another $6 million. And then this is the timeline for the budget hearings September 4th and September 16th. If we come to some resolution today on anything else the board would like to see, we could go directly to the budget hearings with these final numbers. So that's where we are since June 17th, Commissioners.
Any questions for Pete?
I had a question. Pete, for the pay adjustments, that 5% you're saying that's for all county employees, would that be for other constitutionals too?
The constitutionals, that is for general fund county offices. It includes courts, I think medical examiner. The constitutionals are typically take care of their. No, I do know. I did hear from the property appraiser's office that they were mirroring at least in early July the 2% that the state is doing as a pay increase, and then they typically mirror us. So if we're greater than that, and we give greater than that, they typically put that in their budget.
Okay. So if we wanted, for example, I know you did this general fund adjustment 1% to 5%, but if you did say 7%, so basically just take the 1% times up 2, so it'll be $7.289 million then for that. Does that also factor in the FRS contributions and all employees' costs?
Yes.
Like everything? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pendergrass. The sheriff's budget did have, that we approved, a 5% increase in it, so that's already
Correct.
baked in our numbers. So they did move forward with the budget they submitted to us with a 5% increase. I certainly, from my 2 cents, certainly would like us to do a 5% increase. That's my 2 cents. I think we have the flexibility. I think we should. I think next year is going to be a tough year, and I think everybody should be prepared for it being leaner. But I think we're in good shape.
You've seen the sheriff's request. Is that the 5% was that across the board, or was that based upon rank and special services, or was it across the board? Because I know in the past, before the current sheriff adjusted the rates to get people where they should be at, there was always a pay discrepancy of, so you had, when you did 5%, 3% cost of increase, you create more separation between the ranks, but if you do it across the board,
The last 4 years.
as long as they brought everybody else back up the line and everything, I wasn't sure if it was for total staff or just certain personnel.
Yeah, the good news over the last 4 years is they certainly did and closed a lot of those discrepancies and gaps, so.
Do you know how many positions they have open now currently? That's usually what happens in most agencies that have so many positions are unfilled, say 100 positions, and that budget's locked in there. They get that money throughout the year. If they don't fill the budgets by the position by October 1st, that extra money is not spent. Do you know if they have any empty positions now?
No, but what I do is both Matt Sands and Jill Jones, who does a budget, will be in on the 19th. I'll gladly make sure I distribute what they give me.
Yeah, it's just something they can use, and they do that. They take
What
that.
I'll also do is the last report, again, with me being out, I'll make sure you all get the last report they sent me. It kind of covers all the issues. It's a good job. They do a nice job.
What a lot of cities and counties do in that position. They have, like, September 30th, they have all the unfilled positions. They take that extra money, use it throughout the department and different departments. But sometimes it's payroll money, but it's still unfilled positions. You get 10 positions, that's, like $6 million.
Yeah, the
Total
issue
cost.
that you have had, and that's been an issue in the sheriff's office, is they had a couple of, like 100 openings, but my understanding is that's narrowed considerably. But yeah, they did have an awful lot, and what we've tried to do with the sheriff's office different is just talk about when there's an excess surplus that they give it back to us, instead of just having it incorporated in their budget, or we just reduce the request going forward. But we do recognize that. I try to just say, like, okay, we have cap for adjustments. That's what we do, right? Pete has pretty significant cap for adjustments. I just wanted him to put it back in the pot. When we budget it, it's one thing. When you spend it, it's another thing. The difference, obviously, is what you didn't spend that you planned for, and that should be our money, to Commissioner Pendergrass's point. Just having more transparency and accountability.
Question, will we have all the other constitutional offices numbers before 2 weeks from now, the next meeting, so we can see what the whole playing field of each department decisions, proposals are? Is there a date certain for that?
Commissioner, their budgets are set, so I don't see their budgets changing.
So I thought you said you didn't know what the raises proposed for each office were.
Yeah, I don't, but that's something they take care of in their initial budget submission.
So Pete, maybe for the record, do you know what
I thought the property appraiser said 0 raises, but they were going to absorb the cost of the extra insurance premiums that they did. And
I thought the property appraisers was 2%, but he was looking to see what we did.
Yes.
My understanding is that supervisor elections and tax collector has 5. I heard the clerk has 0. But that's what I heard, and the sheriff's obviously has 5. I misstated anything? That's my understanding across the board.
And then Pete, any other budget or any other raise would be assumed in their budget. They don't come back and ask for it. They assume it's
Correct.
in their budget.
Correct.
so do we have copies of all those? Can we get those?
They typically, they don't spell out their budget within, I mean, I keep saying budget. They don't spell out their raise within their budget, do they? The
No.
constitutionals?
The sheriff's office does, so I'm not
Sheriff
sure you have
does,
that.
but the constitutionals typically.
It's just
not.
buried, they just bury it in the number and say we need X.
But to your point about the open positions, I know at the state level, one of the big DOJ motions they were doing was they were trying to get rid of, they said they need $50,000 a year spots, unfilled, and then they'd hire $100,000 people, so instead they used the money a little differently. So they were trying to clean up a lot of those things. How does the Lee County stand with open positions or open positions right now? Do you have any of those?
What are, yeah, we do. I don't have them in front of me, but I can get those to you.
Okay.
Yeah. I can get them per department for you.
I forgot to turn my mic on, but thank you.
No worries, no worries. I heard.
Any other feedback to give Pete?
Just, so did we say the state did 2% then? Is that what?
Yes, I believe so. That's what I was told by the property appraiser's office.
Well, maybe, for whatever our next conversation is, when we finally nail all this down, could we get firm numbers on that, just so that we know what everybody else did? Like, what did the state do? What did all the constitutionals do? Just kind of get an idea of what the whole universe looks like out there before we might nail something down, I think.
If that's fair, we'll bring you back a couple of pieces, the constitutional, if we could split them out.
What the actual cost of living increase was.
Yeah,
We're always doing a cost of living analysis, we'll make sure my only reservation, as I said this morning with cost of living is, depending on, there's 3 or 4 different indexes, like, prime rate says what the Wall Street Journal says. I don't know what indicator to get the right consumer price index, because I think you can find one that might range in 1% or 1.5% from what people have indicated. So, but we should give you an idea of what that looks like. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Do that, constitutionals, this. Any other open items? Maybe Pete, we just need to have, county manager, we have one quick, might take 20 minutes.
On the 19th?
Yeah.
Yes. We'll come back on the 19th for that information.
There was one more I wanted to talk about then, if we're moving to a different topic. So the growth increment funding, one of the things I think we got away from was maybe the root of the growth increment funding. So when we first created growth increment funding, the idea was it was going to be similar to like a TIF, fund, tax increment funding, right? The idea was we were going to figure out how much new revenue we got from vacant properties being built on, being improved. So how much revenue did we get from the new homes or buildings being built? And then also, how much new revenue did we get from the resale of homes where the new taxable value got reset? And then that was going to be the increment, right, that we were going to take and calculate, and then we were going to put that towards growth, towards capital projects. And somehow it went from being almost formula driven to like, hey, here's just a flat amount we're going to put every year towards the growth increment fund. It wasn't like, I don't believe the calculation was run anymore. And so that, that disappointed me when I heard that, because I thought, wow, it's really not an increment fund anymore then. And then now I'm sad that for the last couple years, last couple budgets, we're not even putting anything aside for capital as far as growth increment funding. And so I guess what I would like to know to have a deeper conversation about growth increment fund is, could we run the numbers to find out what that true growth increment fund number should be this year, and at least maybe have a conversation about that. I likened it to, on your personal home budget, there's an idea that you would, when you get paid, you would save 10% right off the top for your retirement, I liked that, hey, we made money in property taxes, and we were going to save a part of the increment, a part of the new money that we made. We were going to put that towards growth to try to keep up with growth. And it bothers me that we haven't been able to keep that going, because we're certainly growing. The growth hasn't stopped, even though we stopped putting that money aside for it.
What's your answer? How did you learn that? Because I was under the impression we're still doing the calculations. How did you learn that we weren't doing that? Did you ask and you were told? Or
Commissioners, we do that calculation. I don't know if I have one for next year, but it was running in the $30 million range, and the budget just couldn't absorb that.
I knew it was lower than 13, but that's why I was wondering. I know that real estate's changed over the years. Ever since COVID, you had the increase in property values and the demand and stuff. We have a lot of transactions, that's why. But Commissioner Hammond's right. That's the purpose of that originally was. And remember, Commissioner Mann says the best things ever seen best government work he's ever supported, but he couldn't vote for it, though, because it was placing impact fees. But it was a great institutional way of doing things, because it was a great way for us to project and have some extra funding for those special projects, whatever it may be, to fund that. And it was a good, from the taxpayers, we didn't raise your taxes, we're just taking what you're having to pay, which is meant for the statute of your increased value. So it was a great way to collect the money and spend it. But
So Pete, did you just say it was running in like the $30 million range when we were doing the calculations?
Yeah.
But
when we come back on the 19th, I can give you what it was each year. It got to a point where it just couldn't be absorbed in the general fund. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I felt like that would have been a policy call that I would have loved to seen directly placed in front of us to make, instead of it just kind of appearing in the budget that way. And I don't know that, we got to make that policy call. So.
When did you all implement growth
It was around 15 or 16, I'm thinking it was.
Yeah, it had to be around there, yeah.
16.
Yeah, because the first few years when we got here in 2012, the first few years were just constant fights over impact fees, and then we came up with the growth increment formula, which solves some of the problems, because impact fees obviously only have to be spent in specific districts, and impact fees also don't take into account the resale increases in property taxes. And so this took into account the resale from the homestead being reset, and it could be flexible. It could be used where it was needed most. And so I thought it was a really good solution when we came up with it.
Paying it anyway, or impact fees, we as homeowners, we pay those impact fees. I know about my last kid's house, I paid those impact fees at closing, so if we're talking about affordable housing, that was a great way for us to collect funds. It was directed, use it for that 1 year, unrestricted, without the district sensitive thing.
I thought it was brilliant what y'all did. County manager?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are we not doing this line item anymore? It's not included in our budget, is that what I'm hearing?
Right, yeah, we're not doing it anymore.
So what is staff's recommendation to solve this slide?
So if I may, just real quick, just to answer a couple questions. When we started to have difficulty with the budget, we did bring forward the recommendation to not fund it to the full amount. We brought it forward to bring it to fund it based on what we had available, what we had capital available. And so for the last 2 years, I believe, we put forward that philosophy based on a discussion we had at a workshop to say, obviously we're not going to be able to slide the 30 million that the formula folds out. So essentially the same thing this year. We did not have in the beginning, we definitely did not have it. And as we rolled, we implemented a couple of things. We went forward to say, okay, the board gave us initiative on a couple of things. One of that's the infrastructure, which is DOT. The other one was public safety. So being some of the top board priorities, we pushed those through. At the same time, we believe we would be able to get growth increment funding by December, but it's probably in that lower range, not the full range. And the only reason we're seeing that is because when you look at this slide, you have the medical examiner that we believe we can fund, but by funding it with the mechanism that we're laying out, it limits the additional funding we have for other programs like the Sheriff's Capital, EMS, DOT. And all those things are essentially board priorities. So we're trying to make sure that we cover all of them as opposed to not funding any of them. And like the medical examiner, we can't get away from not funding that 100%. So we don't have the option unless the board decides to do something different. So we're trying to make sure that we cover all the directive the board gave us, but at the same time, not completely adding the growth increment fund until we have the full funding. So I mean, it's just based on a conversation I think we had 2 years ago. Probably we should go more in detail about that.
Commissioners, I misspoke a little bit. We did discuss keeping the growth increment funding flat because in order to balance the budget.
Okay. And we may have, I don't know that we had a full picture of the magnitude of what we were looking at that time. I don't recall it anyways, and it was a long time ago, so no point in relitigating it. But my thought is, one idea, this is just an idea, probably a million reasons why you wouldn't want to do it, but maybe there's an idea here. You go ahead and set aside the growth increment fund every year and call it the growth increment fund. If it's 30 million, 40 million, whatever it is, right? And then you can use that growth increment fund to fund your capital projects. It's not required to be used on transportation. We did always use it pretty much exclusively for transportation, but the truth is we got a lot of capital to build, and so you could have basically just said the growth increment fund is our capital money, and we're going to fund capital projects, whether they're roads or medical examiner's office or EMS stations, out of the growth increment fund. But at least then you were taking into account that, hey, the new growth revenue we got this year was going to go towards capital in that first year that it was realized. It's just an idea.
We can, Commissioner, we can easily do that. That's not a problem at all. If that's the direction of the board, we have no issue with that at all. I think the way you're talking about it, either way, we're totally good with however you guys want to move forward. We just want to make sure we follow the board's directive and are able to cover all these categories. So however that decision is made, it works for us.
I'm going to ask, again, I'm a rookie question, forgive me, for next year I won't ever say this is the first time I ever did any of these things. So anyway, when I look at the slide, the reserves went up about $5.7 million from where we were on the previous one. So based on what you just outlined, we could leave the $90 million reserves where they were and call $6 million of the reserves now paying down half of this $13 million shortfall. We could just account for it as a different kind of reserve fund.
Yeah.
Is that what am I hearing that the right way?
Maybe to expand on what Commissioner Hammond was looking for is, he does a chart which basically identifies what growth increment funding was. Then maybe the next column is, okay, what did we do for capital projects, what was spent, and what might have been the residue or the remaining, and say, okay, but we also may find that it was 30 million, we spent 30 million on capital.
Right, that's what I think.
That's
we
what,
might
so
find,
you're just
actually.
truing up, you just want to see it.
We might find that, and then, but then you can also then very transparently say, we took this money, and we put it towards growth, you know, because I hear a lot from people like, we got to build infrastructure to keep up with growth, and it'd be a great thing to show them transparently, like, yep, this is the growth fund that we collect every year based off of the new revenue from growth, and here's the infrastructure projects we funded with it so that we could support the growth, you know?
So a simple chart, what we actually brought in, what we spent in capital, if there's residue, something left over, what is that?
Yeah.
We all have an understanding. And to the, you know, either way, so if we set aside 30 million, we spent 35, we should know that we spent 5 more.
Yeah, there you
I want
go.
to know that, either way, positive or negative.
Not paying for growth. We might actually be doing it, not
Yeah,
It may not be as transparent, we may not see it. We like charts, and, you know, one of the challenges you always have is you ask for all these Excel additional spreadsheets to look at and analyze, but I think they're good. So I think it's a good tool. Anything else, gentlemen? Nothing else before me? I'll call for an adjournment. We'll wrap this up on the 19th. Thank you all.
Thank you.